Good afternoon. How cool is this? I'm so grateful that we all get to come together right now and spend the day chatting about ideas right here in the city that takes those ideas and produces so many of the stories that impact the world. It's one of the reasons I moved here to LA. I remember the day after college, I drove down and I called my grandmother, and she's a remarkable woman, my grandmother. She was a lifelong educator, elementary school teacher. I actually called her Collect, and she accepted because she wanted to offer me some words of encouragement. And right as we were wrapping, she asked me whether or not I knew the difference between an aspiring director and a drifter. I wasn't quite sure I had understood her, so I asked her to repeat herself, and that's when she said Ryan, and her voice got a little serious. The difference between an aspiring director and a drifter is that an aspiring director has a fully employed girlfriend. So you have a lot of work to do. God bless Grandma, she kept it 100. But with those words of encouragement, I pushed on with this deep desire to create stories, the best sorts of stories that can connect and inspire us. And just a few years later, the stars aligned through a series of lucky events for me to film conversations with a few hundred of the world's greatest living thinkers. These were Nobel Prize winners and MacArthur Genius Grant recipients, Pulitzers and Fields Medal winners, some technologists, revolutionaries, even a few internet pioneers. These are people who had gone deeper in their area of research than anything I could have ever imagined, but I knew that this was a really big opportunity, and so I wanted to make the most of it, and I boiled it all down to one simple thing. I asked each of them to explain to me the meaning of everything in everyday language. It was hands down the most mind-blowing year of my entire life, and incredibly, incredibly humbling to learn just how little I actually knew about the world and how we all fit into it. But today I thought I would share with you guys the single idea out of all of those interviews that has most transformed my entire life and pretty much how I view everything. It was an idea shared to me by this man, Dr. Eric Kandel, who pioneered our understanding of the human brain. Kandel actually discovered a secret about the brain, one that you can take right now and improve your life today just by understanding these 4 simple words. You are your memories. Now, I have to confess, when Kandel shared this secret with me, the very first thing that popped into my mind was whether I'd ever be able to rock a bow tie as well as this man. Effortless swagger. But as I sat there deeply pondering this idea, I think it became pretty clear to Kandel that I wasn't fully following, because he said, "You're not fully following me, are you?" And that's when, in an act of great generosity, Kandel took the time to actually explain to me what this means. And I'm going to share it today because it's not just a secret, it's actually what I consider to be a superpower that each and every one of you possesses to entirely design the story of your life. Now, in storytelling, we often learn that the major events a character experiences in their early years go on to influence their later years, and I think that's fairly obvious, right? Even for all of us. Whether or not we like it, our most memorable events go on to shape the people we become, what we go on to do, what we think, even what we're capable of understanding. For Kandel, his earliest memories were of his family being forced to escape Vienna, Austria, in order to avoid the Nazi invasion. And that experience had such a deep impact on Dr. Kandel that it motivated him to dedicate his entire life to understanding the forces underlying humans, the ones that collectively shape our humanity. So he arrived in the States, and he studied his way to Harvard and then to med school, and he became extremely fascinated with the work of Freud and his research on the id, the ego, and the superego, because Kandel was so curious what could account for a human being able to listen to Haydn or Mozart or Beethoven one moment and then go on to brutalize a race the next. And as he was studying this, a mentor came up to Kandel one day and he said, "Look, if you really want to understand people by understanding the brain, the only way you can do that is one cell at a time." And that's when Kandel decided that he would study memory, because memory is the glue that holds your mental life together. You are who you are because of what you learn and what you remember. You are your memories. But to put this into perspective, this was back in 1952, and back then we basically didn't have the faintest idea how a memory was created in the brain. So Dr. Kandel, through his research, came to discover that there are actually two very different types of memories created by our experiences. So we're going to do a little test. I'm going to ask everyone here 3 questions, and all you have to do is silently think of the answers yourself. So this should be the easiest test you take all day. Where were you the morning of November 1st, 2014? What did you have for lunch last Thursday? And this past week, how many cell phones have you heard ring? All right, quick show of hands. How many could remember 1? 2? 3? All right, not that many hands. And you guys are not alone. That's because these questions, they ask you to recall experiences that carry with them neither a highly rewarding nor highly punitive experience. The stimulus is quite low, and so your brain, it ignores that. All right, so 3 more questions. Same rules apply, silently to yourself. Where were you on the morning of September 11th, 2001? What was the first big music concert you ever went to? And where were you exactly the very first time you had relations? All right, so from the laughter, I'm going to guess that we're at least going to get one of these. All right. How many got 2? 3? All right, so a lot more hands this time around. And that's because these questions, they ask you to recall experiences that do carry with them a highly rewarding or highly punitive stimulus. In the case of that 3rd question, I hope rewarding. But what Kandel discovered is that with that first batch of questions, those are associated with something called habituated experiences. And with habituated experiences, because the stimulus is low, your brain learns to ignore it, and it forms your short-term memory. But with that second batch, those are sensitized experiences. And this is where Kandel cracked the code. What he discovered is that with sensitized experiences, there's actually a physical change that takes place in the nucleus of your brain cell. It strengthens the communication between those cells. So this cell talks to that cell with much greater frequency. And through that strengthened communication, that gives rise to your long-term memories. And long-term memory doesn't just stick with you, it is you. Not long after I met Dr. Kandel, I met another man named George who had suffered from traumatic brain injury, and as a result, he had a very difficult time ever forming new long-term memories. George was sort of like that guy from that movie Memento, because about 15 minutes into my having a conversation with George, he reintroduced himself, having no idea that we had previously been speaking. I met him at a neuroscience research institute where George was desperately trying to find someone who could help him restore his ability to create long-term memories. And George said something to me that I found devastating. He referred to himself as his own dear pet. He said, "I love myself, I care for myself, but I can't have a conversation with myself." And the same goes for my friends and my loved ones. Whether or not they're a million miles away or right here beside me, it doesn't matter because I won't remember. Without my memory, all of this is meaningless. We just take a second and imagine what it would be like to live in that reality. Not too long ago, the New York Times did a piece on an artist named William. This is a self-portrait that William did in 1967. And in 1995, William was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so that year, he decided that every year he would draw another self-portrait so that he could understand what was happening. Over the next 5 years, William literally painted the picture of what it means to lose the thing that so many of us take for granted. Tonight, when you go home and you look in the mirror and you begin to have a conversation with yourself, that voice that you hear, how sound its advice, how colorful it is, the depth of its understanding of you, that is all a byproduct of your richest life experiences, the best and the worst. And just by understanding this, you can harness the power right now to begin designing your life around the richest, the most rewarding experiences, big or small, but each and every single day. And right now, more than any other time in human history, you also get to decide how you're going to leverage technology to enhance or diminish those experiences. Through the apps that you download, through the platforms that you engage, through the data that you share, each and every single day you are designing your life by how you're using technology. I'd like to illustrate this through the example of a couple people. This one is a man named Julius who lives in a rural village in Kenya. And Julius really wanted to teach himself how to throw the javelin. He didn't have a coach, and so he went down to his cyber cafe, and every single day he would study YouTube videos. In fact, the villagers started calling him Mr. YouTube. And over time, he studied these techniques so well that he taught himself how to throw the javelin. In fact, he taught himself so well that at the 2015 World Championships, Julius took home gold. And at the last Olympics, he actually got silver. This is another story of a young girl named Hailey. Hailey has autism, and here she is at her 18th birthday when not one of the classmates that she invited ended up showing. I mean, that picture, you can understand why Hailey was obviously so heartbroken. But Hailey's cousin, Rebecca, decided that she would take that picture and post it to her global community of friends on Facebook. She asked them if, for Hailey's 19th birthday, they might send letters or cards or well wishes. Well, then the Reddit community got involved, and over the next few months, over 30,000 cards, gifts, and well wishes rolled in for Hailey for her 19th birthday that she celebrated with her new global community of friends. And finally, here's a story of a girl named Aisha. Aisha didn't just want to leverage technology to enhance her experience. She actually wanted to understand the language of technology so that she could create better experiences. And so this past year, she became one of the 40,000 girls who joined the Girls Who Code movement, an organization that's dedicated to breaking down barriers between men and women in the technology world by programming. Aisha also happens to be a Syrian refugee, and to show some love back for the US, she decided that she would create an app that this year is going to help 18 to 24-year-olds show up at the polls for the elections. In all of these cases, and there are obviously so many more cases of how people leverage technology in their lives, but the thing that connects them all is that we are a byproduct of our experiences. And by appreciating that, we can recognize that the way in which we use technology, our relationship with technology each and every day shapes who we are. Now, they tell you when you're doing this talk that you should only focus on one idea. Don't try and take on any more, or people are going to hate you. I'm sort of paraphrasing there. But at the risk of potentially creating a painful long-term memory, I am going to share one more idea. It's something that I observed while I was interviewing all of those different thinkers. The thing that associated Dr. Kandel with greatness was not just the experiences that he had in his life. The thing that associated his name and all of their names with greatness was that through the experiences they created, they empowered millions more to be able to have better experiences as a result. And in my own personal life, this idea impacted me so deeply that it motivated me to partner with my longtime friend Matt and launch a company that raises money and awareness for charity by offering the chance to actually win once-in-a-lifetime experiences. Here's one of the weekly experiences we have. This is our team gathered around to surprise one of our winners. This is DC Barnes. DC actually got to be in Star Wars: The Force Awakens. So here's DC sharing that experience with his friend on the Millennium Falcon. There he is with the young director, J.J. Abrams. You guys should make note of that name. He's got a promising career ahead of him. And here's some of the kids who, through the $4.26 million that were raised, are now going to have better experiences because of the work of UNICEF Innovation Labs. I'm deeply grateful for being able to be a part of that experience. So to wrap, as we today talk about our relationship between humanity and technology, I think these ideas allow us to boil everything down individually to just two questions we get to ask ourselves. Are you creating the memories you want through the experiences that you have in your life every single day? And are those experiences empowering others to do the same? Thank you.